Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to tap into the healthcare side, and we're going to discuss AI and talking it. I would say rounding it off, where some people may be speaking of a nursing crisis or healthcare crisis, because one thing is true. Um, there is a crisis in professionals getting into the field. Now, I'm not one to try to make it everything about someone disliking me or keeping me from anything. That's definitely possible. People have to engineer things to keep people out of stuff, right? They have to do that, but naturally, that's just not going to happen, right? If it's for you, it's for you. So I wanted to bring up, AI and robotics or robots being used as companions because, that was one thought of mine at some point. I don't know if anyone has heard of any nanotech. I've invested in some stocks into nanotech because it's all about helping to detect certain diseases or viruses, within the body. Now, everybody is not going to be open to it. That's fine. Whatever your beliefs are, this is not the channel for you. Um, but I'm going to focus on this article today because this is very real, right? And I think when I think of AI, I don't think it's as advanced as people want to believe it is. Maybe the next decade or so, but it's still going to take a lot of humans, a lot of minds to do that. And when we talk about America, um, America sometimes to me is behind because you have other countries who have already invested, who already have their children growing up, studying these things. They're engineers. I even think to myself, like, what happened to all the dads who were training their sons on ingenuity? Some men, in my opinion, they only want to do the most simplest, easiest thing, and unfortunately, the rhetoric online would make some people believe that they are just simple like that. And I don't believe that. I think there's a lot of men who have the most complex minds, along with women, right? But they have complex minds in how they think. But I think depending on how you grew up, your culture, maybe you had a dad who was actually into different things. I think that also depends on you. I'm grateful that I had a dad that, though he didn't, um, you know, go to college or anything like that, because of the era he grew up in. But he was very, very intelligent in the way that he built things, meaning he did his own blueprints because he learned in the field, right? But that he took that information and was able to do different things that help the family. So when I think of my dad, I paid attention. I'll say that. As his daughter, I paid attention. I think I came across some guy's channel, which I'm just like, do not show me this bullshit again, because to me it's like I'm not saying every man on that channel or whoever listens to it is this way, but if you are a man who got some freaking skills, like, you should not even be around those type of people. In my opinion, I'm not even around women who tries to downplay women. Like, as human beings, we've always have been innovating since the first person figured out fire and made tools and things like that. Like, you have to think like that. If you're not thinking like that, then I don't know what to tell you. You're defeated mentally. But when I think of that type of stuff, I was very young, learning a lot of different things. Me and another brother of mine, we were very into like different things. I had a kitchen set, but I would rather play with my brother's tool set because I was just into that. I don't know, something about it just pulled me in to want to build things, right? To want to design things. And there's even today, I don't think it's hard for me to even think in that manner. Similar to my dad, because of him, he's built extra rooms and additions on the house, and and when it comes to electric, to drywall, to windows, to door, like he's done all of it without. And then he was a one man team. Okay, so that's the type of home I come from as a woman today. And I feel homes like that. Again, I'm not saying my dad was the best husband, but when you're coming from environments like that, and it's just not my family as a black woman, but when I look at different families, for example, and I'm sorry, I'm going to read this article. I just wanted to talk about this as a moment. I remember working for a company in my early IT career, and there was this one guy. He was a database administrator, and he would come to me, and we would just, we would have a cool time talking, and he would say, "I don't know what's wrong with my son," because we were, me and him, we were like chatting up about drones and stuff. So I know some people have ideas of, white guys and all these. I don't care. Again, I can get along with men who aren't thinking about gender. When we're talking about cool stuff and building and stuff, like we're out here, and when women or men are like that, like, man, the conversations are so freaking amazing, man. I had so many great conversations in my life, you wouldn't even believe it. And mostly, I would say, with men. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of women, but mostly with men, because I just don't think of myself how some women think I should think of myself socially. Though I understand, our point of from a point of view of a woman as well. But I remember this guy, we were talking, and he was just like, "Man, I try to show my kid drones. I try to show my kid this," because he's like me. Even though he's a database administrator, like sometimes we like to tinker on other things outside of that. Like I like drones, not to just take pictures, but I like to fly them because I thought it was freaking cool to have something like that, right? The Pi, gosh, it's giving my Raspberry Pi devices. I do stuff like that. I build my own computers, because I learned that stuff, right? So I'm really into that. And so he was just like, "Man, my son, I can't get him to do anything." And this was a time, again, this was probably this was around 2016, I believe. And this was a time where other, nations of people, I'll just say nations versus races or cultures of people, they were already seeing how some of their children, and I'm just going to say what it is. It was their sons. They weren't. They didn't have a desire to follow their dads, who had skills. Sometimes we talk about, some immigrants that come here, who come here legally, and they push their children to certain fields because it's about not only the money but the prestige of it, right? And I think that's how you got to think about it, the craftsmanship. To be a doctor, to be go into nursing, to go into these different fields. Me, I'm in more technology, but I don't think it's hard for me to try other things in the realm of building or designing or architecting because I just have that type of mind, right? But now that we're into AI, the AI space, I've came across, on my LinkedIn, a few posts. I would say probably a few years ago that was already talking about AI companions, and we're talking about robotics, right? So this article is pretty much talking about how, there was an AI companion for, let's say, a dementia patient, and how a human would notice certain things about this dementia patient versus an AI. And I'm just going to say this: an AI may have not been trained to take notice, or didn't have the proper, um, well, I'll just say training in place to do these things, right? Now, the issue is, so many people talking about AI and, oh, it's going to take our jobs. The reason it's going to do that because people are not into these fields. Now, one thing I will say, to people that's running America, I'll just say that, and I'm not talking about just the government. I'm talking about people who are in HR, people who are hiring managers, this issue is also on you. This is also on you why we're experiencing what we're experiencing today. You would have more kids of different people that are Americans in these positions had you not tried to fight for only your kids. So you got to think of it in that way too. That's what some things that come to mind when they talk about these scarcity gaps and all of that. I'll just speak for myself and my community. If laws have to be changed just to get jobs for women and men, but especially when we're talking about like black men, and black people, and I'll just say black people in general, and you're saying these are the only jobs you should qualify for, you're killing the nation. You're killing it. I'm just being real with you. And now, only way you're trying to continue to prevent the growth of a specific subset of Americans, you went and you brought in foreigners to into the country to fill in these positions, and you're still dealing with issues. So this article is pointing out what people are trying to bring awareness to, that the healthcare industry, when we're talking about humans, are having issues. For example, let's just focus on this part here. It says Tom's story is quickly becoming America's story. And like I said, he's a dementia patient, and he fell, and the AI companion didn't recognize it, and the AI companion um, said a joke to him versus getting him the proper need, right? Um, because they're saying that a dementia patient may not think or remember to do certain stuff, which is true, right? I think about that when I forgot the name of it back in the day. I want to say maybe it was the early '90s or 2000s, but that whole "I fell and I can't get up" commercial. You have to think: will a dementia patient even think to beep someone with that type of device? So when we're training AI, and this is for people who are into the space, when we're training AI, you need, just like when we talk about business niches and things like that, you need to make sure that AI is trained specifically for that area, right? This is why when you see some job postings of AI training, it's to work with these professionals, because the fact that there is a gap in humans being available. So this says more than 70 million baby boomers are alive today. And in 2026, the oldest are turning 80, which, I don't know. My grandma is 88. And I think I know some people that are older than that. So I don't know what this means. Maybe she's not a boomer. Maybe she's um, the generation before that. I do not know the name at this time. But she's 80. She just turned 88. It says they're entering the most medically complex years of their lives, juggling multiple chronic conditions, cascading medications, and cognitive decline. Just as the physicians trained to navigate the complexity are vanishing. So this is the underlying issue, that there's not enough physicians, not enough human professionals, and people are complaining about AI, but it's the fact that this is the issue. And again, if you had a hand in keeping people out, this is why this issue is now. This is why this is happening, because we cannot we have to think of it as, for every reaction there is for every action there is a reaction. So because of the focus of keeping, and I'm just speaking of black people right now. I'm not saying that every black person wants to go into medical field just like anyone else, right? But let's just focus on black Americans. When you're not giving the proper tools for school, you're not policing our communities correctly, where we're ridding of the terrorists in the community, right? We're not talking about men and women who go to work. We're not talking about grandmothers who have a home and just want to live well. We're not talking about those type of people. We're talking about the terrorists in the community. And now everybody has to look as if we're all into crime and believing in that stuff. And then you have people who try to leave those type of communities and go to college or get into the military, or maybe they so study and get into a field. Now you're dealing with a decline because the president is saying we don't want to depend on foreign labor either, right? They would never, they could not understand us. And some of these countries are trying to work on their own healthcare systems, right? If you go look at, I think Panama, maybe Colombia as well. I would say Latin America. They're working on their own stuff, which that's what I would love to see. Man, that's an awesome thing to know that they are doing that stuff, right? But when it says they're vanishing, that's one aspect to look at of why that's the problem. So it says the United States has roughly 7,000 board certified geriatricians. Yeah, hopefully I'm saying that right, geriatricians, but I know it's geriatric. Um, but they have 7,000 board certified. So we're talking about millions of people in America with 70 million. We're saying we don't even have enough for two. That means one board certified geriatrician per how many they have to take care of. And again, this is not saying all 70 million are dementia patients, but let's just say 10 million of them. That's still too much. That's overwhelming. That's a burnout already looking to happen, already happening. Okay, it's burnout. Fewer than one for every 10,000 older adults. So there's not enough, meaning America has to open the doors, has to provide the training, the school, and has to say, yo, healthcare is an area you want to get in. Let's not just have you become a nurse, get into these higher professional positions because it's scarcity there, and that's an opportunity. This is an opportunity. That's how I see it. It's an opportunity. In rural counties, the number is often zero. We have tons of rural areas here in America. We have tons of them. And they don't have what a big city may have because, and everybody is piling into big cities, right? But still, rural areas need assistance. They can't just depend on a house doctor who doesn't know anything or never studied anything about a geriatric patient, right? So it says geriatric fellowship programs rank among the lowest field in all of medicine, partly because geriatricians earn $20,000 less manually than internists who skip the extra training entirely. So not only are you trying to burn out these 7,000, for example, you're paying them less, meaning there's an industry issue. There is an economic issue happening in America where, again, I tell people, Americans have been complaining about the wages, the rising costs that continue to happen, and wages don't match. Someone making 120, $150,000 a year, depending on where they live. You can tell people, oh, well, you need to move and move states and blah blah, so your money can, you can invest your money more and stuff. You can, but let's say again, but let's think about these people as professionals where they work at a hospital or they work at certain clinics that a rural area just doesn't have. So, and if they're making over $100,000, they can't just up and leave because they have to get the experience. That's where the patients are at. That's where they are at. So they can't just up and move from where they are because of their professional field. So that means we have an economic issue that's happening as well, that people ain't making their money. Now, when it comes to this AI tool, this article is pretty much explaining how maybe a hybrid system, which that's what I believe. I do not believe AI should be in charge of everything. I think AI can help with, certain type of system tasks, but humans, I think, would still need to be involved, right? And the reason why I believe that is because AI is, I would say maybe just AI and even just AI ML, it kind of still is in its early stages when we talk about the public. Because if you're talking about AI companions, it's not widely. used, right? When you're talking about 70 million boomers, this is not going to be a widely used thing. Then, can people afford it? Who's going to be able to afford a companion to come into their home? So it's talking about also the human disconnect that can potentially happen. But again, when you don't have people coming into this field, or you have people, yapping online, talking about it's not a good field, or you ain't gonna make no money, or whatever they're trying to say, they're just yapping. You have to be responsible for your own life, people. I do not care about it being this whole family and all that. That's one aspect of a life, right? You having a family, but you have to think about the profession and how you serve a greater purpose. So I'm all for hybrid, where you have home care coming in, or again, you have an increase of geriatricians. That means people can go to school and increase this number. We can get up to 1 million, 2 million. To again, this is an opportunity. The government needs to reward people, and that's one thing it speaks about as well. Let me go there. I think it was talking about somewhere in here, but pretty much how the government or Congress can help reward people um, for these AI powered or these AI companions. And then also, policy needs to change as well, because that's the thing. We had, again, I would say it's not even just Obama's era. I would say since 9/11, and I was probably in 10th grade during that time, it's been a bunch of bullshit between our government, politicians, and officials. Where real work, in my opinion, has not been done to help society. So now we're at the brink. We're at a brink point where we're still dealing with inflation, costs are still going up, wages aren't going up, job loss, job scarcity. We have all this stuff. There's states that still have low literacy rates. Literacy is affecting a lot of people in the U.S. We have a lot of that stuff going out around because I feel people in certain areas, they just have not invested in our children enough, right? Because of their perceived notions or what they believe it is. And again, I'm not someone who's going to allow, because I don't think it's just like, I don't see it as just white people per se, right? I know some people want to say that and look at it that way. I don't always look at it as a white person thing. Now, yes, they are in these positions. They have, brought this type of environment. But I don't look at it as every white person has done anything. I think there's a lot of white people who are just average people who also are going through the same thing. Again, this number here doesn't reflect anything to me. This reflects is that yes, maybe they had a hand in not marketing to schools, marketing to low income areas. When you're bringing in a lot of immigrants, you're not investing in what you have here, and that's the problem. Not seeing the gold and the diamonds right in your face, but you rather push that out, and it's like, yeah, you got to get over that, and maybe these people in the boomer generation, maybe those are the people who just need to be totally removed at some point. I'm not saying they all gonna just croak and die tomorrow. I'm just saying a lot of those ideas and thought processes come from those older generations, and you still have those people in place, and you have some of their kids in place, right? But I'm not here to wipe paint a brush on everyone, because I understand economics, and I understand even at one point women had issues. So it's all about us thinking of better opportunities and options. I know some men are spreading their validation and ego issues across the line, but it's like women, these are perfect areas to get into, because at some point millennials will be next. And then it would be Gen Z next, right? So we need to look at these systems and what we have now to try to find solutions now. And I like a hybrid solution, you know. But this talks about um, burnout, caregiving, but still wanting that human aspect involved in caring for patients, for example, and to be specific, since this is more of dealing with a geriatric person who has dementia. Um, it's saying how Congress should also invest directly in a geriatric workforce pipeline, and I think that's important. And the pipeline can't be, well, we only want certain type of people. Like, I'm sorry, if you are a white American, you got to get over that. You got to get over that hump, and you have to think about the bigger mission here, right? The bigger goal here, the end goal, the purpose here. We can't think about what happened 100 years ago in the aspect of you're trying to keep someone down or whatever. Like, we are a nation of our own. Okay, we are our own nation, meaning we have to work together if we're going to say we don't want to depend on foreign labor. We want to invest in people here. Schools are messed up. You got some kids running wild. You got a lot of things jacked up, and people don't want to point to the policies or discrimination practices. This is why. People feeling job scarcity that ain't really experiencing high unemployment rates. It's crazy. You have to even look at your nation and your culture and say, yo, y'all got to shut the hell up. Y'all got to shut the hell up, because this is the bigger goal at the end of the day. Some of those people that just talk all type of shit and make y'all look bad, they're not even into this type of stuff. They're spreading misinformation online. They're not looking at the bigger cause of human longevity. This is when I look at stuff like this. This is about our longevity as humans, even, right? So yeah, I think the Congress should invest into the workforce pipeline. So not just being a nurse, right? Getting into a professional field. So even though there's this issue with healthcare right now, I think the whole issue is humans. But again, I'm someone who's for innovation, and I believe AI can still assist in areas. But again, when you're training AI, it has to be trained for these type of situations, and I think that comes over time. I don't think it's something that's overnight. So you get articles like this, but it's about trying it out and seeing how it works and how can we retrain it to do what we need to do. So, and let me just read this. It says Congress should also invest directly in the geriatric workforce pipeline, expanding loan forgiveness for geriatric medicine fellows, funding intergenerational caregiver training programs that connect health profession students with aging families, and creating a federal caregiver tax credit that acknowledges the 870 billion in unpaid care family members already provide. So this would boost up those that are doing home care. Even though the president may say, well, we don't believe these particular types of degree or training programs should be recognized anymore as higher degree levels. That may have been a mistake on his part, in my opinion. It may have been a mistake, but you have people who are just average people who may deal with job issues. You have some young women. These are ways to get into caregiving, a way to see herself being a part of something greater as well, right? So I think they should be rewarded for that. So we have to kind of look at this, because again, I don't think AI is at the point where it's highly sophisticated, in my opinion. But it's still getting trained. You still have some people out there, and I think it's still scarce. You have people that are focusing on content generation mostly for AI, but you have people like myself who focus on other things to say, hey, just because the door may have closed here doesn't mean other doors will not open. And I see an opportunity in this. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for joining my channel. Leave your comments for discourse in the chat, the comments below. And thank